Nicolas Firzli is Director General of the World Pensions Council, and he joins me here at the GEPF Thought Leadership Conference. Nicolas, first of all, tell us a little bit about what the World Pensions Council is. What do you do?
Mark, I'm delighted to join you today. So we're a Paris-based international think tank and pension fund association. So we do two things essentially. One of them is research, and the other is advocacy, which is another word for lobbying on behalf of the pension industry. We have a broad definition of what the pension industry is. So we include both the sort of C-suite CEOs and CIOs, but also, the average man or the common man represented by trustees. So many of these trustees, board members, represent employees, and so we like to cover the whole pension remit.
You've just got off stage, you've done your talk with the delegates. Central to that was this concept of geoeconomics. In a nutshell, what is it? Why do you think that's so important?
Because we think it's essential, because we think geoeconomics is transforming radically the way financial markets operate across asset classes, and it's the notion that in the world we live in, with the accelerating, hardening Chinese-American rivalry, the war in Ukraine, etc., these barriers separating, on the one hand, the world of industry, the economy, financial markets, and on the other hand, the world of geopolitics and military strategy, that separation is being blurred for many reasons, but to make a long story short, both the Chinese and the Americans are now playing the geoeconomic game. So they're both weaponizing international law and finance. And so we're seeing a convergence of strategy, geopolitics, and finance, and investors, European investors or global investors, pension funds, are caught in the middle, in the crossfire, so to speak. So my point is they need to adjust to that new reality and factor in the fact that we will now all live in the age of geoeconomics.
You were also talking about the rise of a pension superpowers. Who are the pension superpowers, and how do they navigate this new world of geopolitics?
Great question. And so basically, some nations have emerged in the past 20, 30 years as pension superpowers. So they may not have missiles or nuclear rockets, but now they're sitting on huge piles of assets. And proportionally, relatively, they're much bigger than the rest of the world. So you have 5 or 6 countries, one of them Britain, the other ones being Australia, Canada, Holland, Singapore, Scandinavia. These 5 or 6 countries, altogether, their overall pension assets represents 70 or 80% of the world's wealth, or of the world's pension wealth. So really, there's a massive concentration of power, and in the future, in that new, dangerous world we live in, the fact that some nations like Holland or Britain have these huge pension pots will make them stronger. And that's why we're saying that they are pension superpowers, because on the other hand, countries like Germany or France, which are big economies with big GDPs, they have tiny pension assets. So in the future, the fact that they don't have these domestic assets available for investment will be a factor weakening the economy of France or Germany, for example.
With these big pots of capital, what do you see pension funds doing with them? Because there was a really interesting chart you just had up where you were showing the development of asset allocation. And without going into too much detail, some of the Canadian pension funds have anything up to 40, 50% in private equity or alternative assets, another 20% in infrastructure. Do you see these pools of capital being recycled into the real economy or being used to make asset prices fluctuate in other people's markets?
No, absolutely. I mean, these pension funds, the big Australian and Canadian pension funds, especially public pension funds, could be municipal, provincial, or federal, national level, are very sophisticated. On many planes, you could say that they're like 5, 10, 15 years ahead of the curve. So the way they allocate their assets is fascinating because, as you said, overall, private asset markets, including VC, private equity, infrastructure, real estate, forestry, can go up to 40, 50%. and infrastructure alone, 15-20%. That's quite remarkable because your average pension fund in the civilized world, in rich countries, your average pension fund in California or Denmark has 12-15% in private market assets and 1.5 or 2% in infrastructure alone. So really we think that the world is moving towards that Australian, Canadian allocation. We think it's great because investing in private asset markets is often very good for the real economy, job creation and growth.
Final question, we're here in South Africa, so in the hierarchy of pension powers, where's South Africa?
Quite good, quite good. So South Africa is really a large second tier. So if you look at the total pension assets vis-a-vis GDP, I think here in South Africa it's 40%, quite good. In countries like France it's like 12 or 10%, so South Africa is doing quite well. In these pension superpowers like Australia, Canada or Holland, it's 200%, but still that 40% figure is quite good, and the pension pot is growing rapidly, so South Africa is doing quite well actually.
We have to leave it there. Nicolas Firzli, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, my pleasure.